Hi, this is Jeff Spencer, statistics instructor for the Community College of Denver, and this is the tutorial video on how to set up your linear regression calculator for our linear regression unit. So at this point, we're just adding to our stats calculator that we've been working with before in Google Sheets or Microsoft Excel. We already have, I've created 3 tabs, but at least 2 tabs for your one-bar stats calculator that we've been using previously. And I just created a third one. You don't have to have that, up to you. But mainly what you want to do is add, I would say, at least 2 tabs for linear regression 1 and linear regression 2. And at this point, what you want to do is, zoom in a little bit more, is basically just add the information that you see here. Most of this is going to be pretty static. I have these numbers in here so that when we put in the formulas, we'll see some results and match on results to make sure that your stuff is working. So you can pause the video at this point and fill in this static information. Okay, now another thing I'm going to add that's also static information, but I'm going to show this in the video because I'm going to move some things around, is under the linear regression equation here in this cell. I'm going to put the form of the equation. It's your standard y equals mx plus b form, and we're going to have numbers for m, the slope, and b, the y-intercept. So I'm going to put in y equals, press enter, and then I'm actually going to align this cell so that it's aligned to the right, all right, because the actual numbers are going to be over here. So in this part, we'll have our, I'm going to shrink this a little bit, okay, and then we're going to have our slope in letter E, or cell column E, and then we're going to have times x here, and then we're going to have a plus, and then we're going to shrink that so it fits next to G, where we're going to put the y-intercept. So basically at this point, what you see here is basically kind of like static. It's not going to change. Just kind of fill that in and make sure you have all this information before we get any further in the video. All right, now what we're doing in this unit is we're looking at the relationship between 2 variables. We call it bivariate data, meaning 2 variables. And we have the x variable, which in algebra we call the independent variable. Sometimes in statistics it's called the explanatory variable or the predictor variable. In my video from a while ago, my last textbook called it the predictor variable. I kind of prefer explanatory, but explanatory, predictor variable, either way, it's the x variable. And then y is the response variable. In algebra, we call that the dependent variable. And we want to see if there's a relationship between these 2 variables, whether they trend positively up and to the right, whether they trend negatively down and to the right, or they have no linear relationship at all. And really, this is more of a tutorial video, so we'll talk about those relationships specifically in the other videos, but make sure to have these numbers so that we can start getting some results. Okay, so we're going to put our correlation coefficient, which is labeled with a lowercase r, that's the variable for this, this statistic. We're going to put that in here in this cell, and we're going to do equal, and we're going to do coral. And give me 1 second, I need to make sure I'm putting in the data or the formula in here correctly. Okay, so I was just double checking to make sure I do this in the correct order. So here we want to actually put in the y variables, which are the results of the x. So we'll click on cell A3. That's the beginning of my data, or sorry, B3, excuse me. We'll click on that cell. And I could click and drag, but I'm just going to do colon B1000. So in case I have data that goes all the way to the 1000th cell, and then a comma, and I'm going to click on A3 colon A1000. Right parenthesis, enter. This gives us what's called the correlation coefficient, which is a measure of the strength of the relationship. It's measured between -1 and +1. Positive values tell you that you have a positive correlation as x goes up, y goes up. Negative is the other way around, as x goes up, y goes down. This is what we would call a very strong relationship, but the details of that are covered in the other videos, the other lecture videos for this week. So we just want to get the formula there and have that ready. Okay, next let me make sure I have the correct formulas for these 2 cells down here. Okay, then in this cell down here, remember in the equation of a line, we have y equals mx plus b. So m represents the slope. So here we're going to do equals slope. Pick that function. And then once again, we're going to do the same thing that we did for the correlation coefficient. We start with the y data. So b3 colon b1000 comma a3 colon a1000. Right. Parenthesis. Put that in there. Boom. I don't know why it's calling it 200%. So we'll do format number automatic. Okay. And then in here, we're going to do equal. We're going to do intercept. This function here, intercept. We're going to do same order for the data. B3 colon B1000 comma A3 comma colon A1000, right, parenthesis, enter. Okay, and so then this is the equation of our line. If you want to squeeze that just a little bit more so it looks like that. All right. So these three cells are where our formulas are. Okay, various questions are going to ask you what the correlation coefficient is and what the regression equation is. This is the slope, this is the y-intercept. Okay, the details of what these things mean and all that stuff are covered in the other videos. At this point, we should copy all this information over. So let's do Control or Shift and drag. Make sure that we copy all these cells that have information in it. I'm going to do Control C, Command C. Click up here, Command V. It's all in there. I do want to shrink this cell a little bit. Maybe shrink this cell. It doesn't really matter, the E1. And then basically that's set up the way I want it. Maybe expand this one a little bit. Okay, so we can see the variable there. Okay, now I'll show you like how we would use this calculator. Okay, so let's say like I have a big data set or a smaller data set that I could just plug in the data values one by one. Let's say I have this data set where I want to look at maybe the bedrooms of a house. I want to see if it has more bedrooms, is the list price higher? List price being what they asked the home to be sold for. So I'm going to highlight this data. And I would guess that more bedrooms, higher price, right? So I think that the number of bedrooms predicts the higher price. So I'm going to put in the bedrooms here and I'm going to do Control V. I'm also going to change this title because now I actually have a name for this variable. I'm going to just do bedrooms. Okay, that's my X variable. I can leave the X there or not. I'm just going to get rid of it, okay, because I have a title now. And then I'm going to say, well, I think that might predict more bedrooms, higher price. So I go down here, highlight all the prices. Now remember, this is paired data, so you never want to sort this data. All this data has to be paired, like this 3 has to be paired with the 369,900 from the top. So it has to match up the same way. So you do not sort this data. Okay? All right, notice that the correlation coefficient changed, the slope of our equation changed, and the y-intercept changed. All right, another thing that we're going to do frequently with this data is we're going to graph it in a scatter plot. So I'm going to show you how to do that as well. So to do that, you got to highlight both the X and the Y data. Make sure it's all highlighted. Okay. So I went a little past, no big deal. Highlight it there. And I'm going to go back up to the top. I'm going to do Insert Chart. Now, sometimes there's a chance that it might not actually pick the right scatter. It might pick a different chart. We do want scatter chart here. But in case it does something weird on you, you can always pick the chart type, go down to the bottom, or not to the bottom, but near the bottom, and you'll see scatter chart. Okay, I picked that. All right. Then I can close this just to kind of show the graph a little bit more. Move it out of the way so it's not overwriting or really covering any of my stuff. I'm going to zoom out a little bit now so I can see everything. All right, and I notice here that it took the, oops, I forgot to change the response variable, whoops. Notice that if I would have changed the response variable here, it would have given the correct name, so I kind of forgot to do that before I made the graph. But the response variable here is list price. Forgot to get rid of that, darn it. Oh well. But this is sometimes this is the mistakes that we're going to make together when we do this. So I can just change this here. I can double click on that to change the title, list price. Now as I double clicked on that, it went into the customize part of this editor of editing the graph. I could have also, instead of just double clicking on that, I could have clicked on the graph, clicked on the three right buttons up there to edit chart, and go to customize, and I could change the chart title. I can change maybe the colors. I can change the things about the title of the horizontal axis, the vertical axis, and so on. Now notice another thing. I see that the highest data point here, the selling price around 200,000, is like right on the edge of the graph, and I want to see that a little bit better. So you can do various changes like this. So I want to scale up the vertical axis so that I can actually see this data a little bit better, data point a little bit better. So I'm going to do vertical axis. Notice as I go down, the minimum value I'm fine with, but let's say I want to change the maximum value to 2.5 million versus just 2 million. Put it in there. And now I can see the graph a little bit better. All right, last thing that you're going to want to do with this data. Let me double check and make sure. Well, I'll just find it with you here. I believe it's in the legend category. Okay, you want to add, maybe it's series. I always get this mixed up. Ah, yes. Okay, go into series, put in trend line so it shows, we have a positive relationship here. Now it's not great. It's not the best relationship ever. It's not the strongest because you can see there's a lot of data points that kind of stray away from that line. The bigger these distances are from that line, the bigger what the residuals are. And if a data set has more residuals, the correlation coefficient is not as strong. Okay, so you want to add that line, and basically the equation of that line that we have right here is this equation that we made right there. Okay. Now, let's say, final thing in this video, final thing. Let's say that you've done all this work and then you're like overriding the data that you just did with like a homework problem or something like that. So I'm personally just going to delete the graph. I'm going to leave everything else, but I'm obviously going to need to get rid of the data. So I delete the data, highlight it, backspace or delete. But notice that there's some formatting things here. All right, the cells are still blue, and I don't like that. So keep that highlighted after you delete it. So I'll just re-highlight it again. Go to Format, Clear Formatting. Now, so that removes all that coloring from the Mount Pleasant real estate data. But notice if, like, let's say, like, oh, this is just X and Y now again. There's no context, and I put in a number here and a number here, it's still using money from the last function. Okay. And I don't like that. So one thing you can do when you highlight all this data and delete it, not only make sure to do format, clear formatting, but also do data, format, number, automatic. Make sure it clicks on that again, and you'll see that it kind of clears the formatting as far as the number too. So when you delete data, just as a reminder, you highlight all your data, you delete it, it goes away. Go to Format, Clear Formatting. Then go to Format, Number, Automatic. Make sure to click on that again so that as you enter in new data, all the formatting from the last problem is gone. Okay? And then each time you can highlight the data, insert the chart, do the things that I've shown you in this video, you have the correlation coefficient each time and the linear regression equation. You can use that. Sometimes you'll have multiple data sets that you want to use different calculators for. So that's why we created two. You can create a third one if you want. And that's all for the tutorial for today. Thanks.